Hi, I'm Tommy, and I'm a professional paleontologist. By day, I use the latest data science techniques to reconstruct ecological and evolutionary changes from the fossil record. But by night, I investigate cryptids, the paranormal, mediumship, the occult, politics, history, philosophy, and even God himself. You know, all the things that good little scientists are supposed to avoid. If you want to join me on my journey, friend, be so kind as to like and subscribe. And welcome to Creepy Puppets Presents. Welcome to this new segment I'm trying out, where I try to explain and expose an idea on the fake left in less than 5 minutes. The fake left is a collection of ideas that claim to be supporting the working class, but once you think about them for more than 2 seconds, these are ideas that clearly serve the ruling class. Critical race theory is a pseudo-intellectual scholarly movement that attempts to understand how racism operates in the United States. First, let's talk about how the real left explains racism in the United States. The concept of white and black as a race didn't even exist in English until after the Bacon Rebellion in 1676, when poor white farmers, black slaves, and mostly Irish indentured servants, who were slaves in all but name, joined together in an act of class solidarity to march on Jamestown demanding better conditions, and ultimately burn Jamestown to the ground before being violently suppressed. And don't worry, the so-called Irish slaves myth will be its own episode if this segment continues. The British, and sincerely, fuck them, phased out European indentured servants in favor of African slaves, and then passed laws giving systemic advantages to Europeans, and promoted the idea that no matter how poor you were, if you were white, you were racially superior to the slaves, so at least you had that going for you. Racism exists in the United States because it's a tool of class control, and that harms poor whites too by inhibiting class solidarity. We overcome racism by overthrowing capitalism and the ruling class, and in the meantime, we do it by emphasizing the commonality of workers regardless of ethnicity, and by appointing a commissar of nationalities within the Vanguard Party to promote official channels of communication between ethnic groups. So that's what the real left says. How does critical race theory explain racism in America? According to them, white supremacy is an ideology that permeates every aspect of our society. Systemic racism isn't merely a manifestation of systemic classism, as the real left says, but is an independent ontology, though promoted by the ruling class and sustained through capitalism. Critical race theory also posits nebulous benefits accrued to white people, the so-called white privilege, which are not the same legal privileges that used to exist under the British system or under Jim Crow, but in most cases are, again, vague and nebulous, or, the consequences of being the ethnic majority in a democracy. Hopefully you can see that critical race theory is just a historical idealism that any Marxist should reject. It sees racism as a self-perpetuating ideology that helps capital, not as a tool of capital. So it should be obvious why critical race theory is a ruling class ideology, right? Like all intersectionalist ideologies, it diminishes the importance of class, thereby allowing the ruling class to focus on race and ignore any class conversations. The news right now is perfectly illustrative of this. The Biden administration has a program that helps poor farmers for non-European ethnic minorities that poor whites are ineligible for, and they've sued. A program that can help all poor farmers is class-based action, which inspires class consciousness, which in turn still scares the ruling class 350 years later. White privilege is further used to diminish the suffering of poor whites. Oh, you can't be oppressed by capital in America. You are white. Go look at the discourse surrounding the opioid epidemic, for example. In the autistic community, people who hate autistics often use the term functioning privilege to dismiss the suffering of verbal autistics, which is most of us, and reduce the effectiveness of our activism, especially of our anti-ABA activism. Nothing good ever comes from privilege rhetoric. I have never used neurotypical privilege or abled privilege in any of my disability rights activism, and I vow to you now I never will. Disregard critical race theory. Go out and meet people of a different race than you, make friends with them, and raise their class consciousness. That's it for this time. Take care, folks.